Okay, so before I go over what you need to do for your first querying part 1, I'd like to just take a moment here to look at the way you would see the course because of the way I have set it up to enforce sequential movement, meaning you have to move through it in sequence. You got to do one item after the other. And I know I've talked about it, but now we can actually see it in a little more detail, right? So in here on this week 1 module, you can see it's got a little icon and it's showing a started if I hover over it, and then I have 2 items that I've completed, which is I think helpful, and you can see this one is now available for me to work on, and I can't move to this one until I finish this one, which really makes sense given the course. So the other thing I want to say is about grades is at this point, and I'm looking at this from a test student perspective. So, but when you're in here, the benefit for this class of working ahead, I'm going to show you just an example. One thing is when I grade, and my goal, as I've said before, is to grade each day of the week. And then as I grade, I will provide you comments, okay? And in this case, the student got a few points off for submitting the URL correctly, right? So I gave them some content or some feedback and saying, fix this issue, and then do this before the due date for full points. So that's the benefit of working ahead, is if you miss something, you can fix it. Because if you wait till the due date, which I get, sometimes that's just the way life works, and you submit it and you miss something in the requirements, then fixing it doesn't always help, often will not, based on the amount of points you lose, okay? Because I take 25 points off for late. Anyway, and in this case, this is also often a time the student and I might have a various back and forth discussion about a specific item, which is totally great. And then if need be, if for some reason I didn't see your feedback, hear from my feedback, then just go over to the inbox in Canvas and use that to say, hey, I left you something, and especially if I haven't replied in 24 hours, do that. Okay? All right, so coming back here. So as I move into this item, I'm going to go ahead and open it, right? And I'm going to show you the setup that I have. Now, in this case, there's going to be the video that you're watching right now. And I'm going to I have a link here to the Markdown instruction, which I already have open here in a new tab. Now, this is where having more screen space is helpful. And in this case, what I mean by screen space is I have a laptop and I have a monitor. You might have a tablet device. You might have, your phone could be one as possibly as well. But because you want to have several things open when working on this assignment, this could be helpful, right? But in this case, I have my instructions here, and then I've already started up my code space here. I do have my terminal. Now, in the last video, I did talk about giving you a little, what we're going to use in the terminal as far as SQLite. But actually, I've realized we're going to cover that in the next assignment, so I won't do that here. But it's never too soon just to remember how to get into the terminal as well. Now I have my screen fairly large as far as icons go, just so you can see it a little clearer. But if you don't remember, right, you come in here, terminal, and you do new terminal. And I noticed the other day, the more I use those keystrokes, the faster I was getting at it. Okay, so that's the instruction, and I'll go over this in a second. There's my code space, and then here is my repo. And just this, I know this can take a little while to get used to, but remember, this repo that I'm looking at in the browser in our GitHub organization is the location where once you push your code from your code space, this is where you have to submit it. Okay, so just getting used to that model that when you're in the code space, and sometimes it can look very similar, so it takes a little while to get used to it, but you can see it up here in the tab as well, and you can see it in the URL. So getting used to knowing the difference between those is helpful. Okay, so now let's start in. So this is your first part of the CS50's querying, that should be ing, part 1. And I've given you a link to the video. So in this case, because of the way GitHub uses Markdown for links, if I just click here, it'll go away from this file, and I want to be able to keep this file open and view this. So this is why I say right click and open in a new tab. So what that will do now is I will have, now in this case you can see I'm a little farther into this video file. The first time you come in here, you'll probably start here. Okay, so now I have the instruction, I have the video, I have my code space, and I have my GitHub, right? So this is where the more screen space, often depending on how you want to get organized. Okay, so here's what you want to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some setup. I'll walk you through that, and then you will work through from the beginning of the video to 12 minutes 25 seconds. Okay, so there's not a lot of content here, but it's good content, and I'll walk you through. And in this case, you're going to be taking notes. But let's just do this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge here. I'm going to read this. I'm going to suggest you stop, see if you can do it on your own, and then, you know, pick it back up, and if you need help, or you'll see me do it once you hit start again. So let's just go over the instructions. I'm going to say stop and then do that. All right, so in your private repo, okay, so when we say that, well, actually, I'll save that for a minute. Create a new folder named querying. And in that folder, create a new file called readme, and this is all caps, no spaces, .md. Now that's just a period at the end of the sentence. Okay, and it says you will take notes in the readme file using Markdown. Again, I've given you a link here. You could right click, open in a new tab if you also wanted to remember what that Markdown was. All right, and then before starting to take notes here, right, use H1, and this tells you the Markdown itself, and use this content, week 1, querying part 1, and then you commit it. Okay, so this is a little bit of a how well did you grasp what we've already done. So pause at this place and see if you can do this, and when you're ready to watch me do it, come back. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to do this step. So over in my code space, for you, you won't have this BK directory. I have this because I was playing with some other files earlier. So you should have your W1. So the key is I want this new querying folder to be at the same level as my W1. Not inside of it, but at the same level. Okay? So in this case, there's a couple ways I showed you before, but I would actually click here on the README file. And why would I do that is to make that my current folder, okay, or my current selection. And by the way, the terminal shows you this as well. But we're going to do this, and you could do the work I'm about to show you in the terminal if you know those commands, always good to do, but we're going to do it in VS Code interface. So first I'm going to create a folder. So notice because I had this selected, and you can see that as highlighted, I'm going to call this querying, and that'll be my folder. Now if for chance you accidentally hit file here, it won't have this little down, and that's how you know you created a folder. Okay, so that's one thing. So then in that folder, you're now going to create a file. Again, it's highlighted, so if I had something else highlighted, it would create it wherever that highlighted folder is. So now I'm going to create a file, and it's going to be called readme.md. Now this is just kind of the standard to do all caps.md. I'm going to hit enter. Okay. So now I can see a couple things. I now have these things in green, which means I haven't tracked them yet. We'll do that in a second. So now let's go back to the instructions and let's see what else I needed to do. So now I'm going to start taking notes in a minute. So I'm going to prepare by typing or using an H1, and this is H1 is abbreviated this way. Or if you look over here, it's actually called heading. If you learn HTML, this is actually called heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. And we use these tags, but in this case with Markdown, we're only going to use this pound as on there. Okay, so coming back here, that's my instruction. So now I'm going to move over to where I created my README file, and then I'm going to put pound, which is going to give me my H1. And if I don't remember the content, I can just go, right, copy that. Cool. So that's great. So now I've added some content into that file, which by the way, and this is good to know as well, you can preview that file over here by opening preview, and what this does is it shows it to you in a rendered markdown file. And what that means is this is the code, this is actually the markdown code file, and this is a rendered file. So when we're looking at, as an example, this file for the instruction, this is a rendered markdown file, and in this case this is the code itself. Okay, so now another test for you. Okay, let's go back here. So now what you're going to do is you're going to commit this, right? So again, I would say pause, see if you know how to commit, because there's a couple things you have to do before you do the commit itself. Remember, there's what we call the Git workflow. We learned that last time. So just this is a great time for you to see how well you're acquiring that knowledge, right? So hit pause here, see if you can work through getting that commit done, and then when you're ready, come back and I'll walk through it. Okay. So over here, I can see I have my current directory down in my terminal. I can see I have some green. I can do a git status here, okay, which tells me I have untracked files in a folder that I've added. So I'm going to clear it just because I don't have a lot of space. I'm going to do a git add star. Now I could specifically add that README, but I'm just going to say, hey, add anything that I've done. Git commit -m, right? And now I've even given you the commit message, right? Setup done, okay? Setup done. All right, great. So now I've done the work required. Now at this point, you might think, and it's not necessarily wrong, that you would push this over to our GitHub organization. But because you're going to still do more work, you don't necessarily have to do it here, okay? At the end of this, you will want to do that Git push at the end, right? But in this case, we're going to do some more work. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the rest verbally, but this is going to be your job to do the following, right? So you're going to start at the beginning of the video, and then it says watch and take notes that will help you better understand the material. Now, I haven't said specifically headings to use, but I do want to see you using Markdown headings. Now, you generally only have one H1, so you might want to do a H2 here for this first commit. Now, what do you name it? It's up to you. It's not a bad practice at this point to also name it what you're going to end up committing here, right? So it says, and also other notes that help you better understand the material covered, maybe like questions or other concepts. So you start at the beginning, you get to 413, stop, and answer, because there's going to be a question that's asked in the video. So again, honor the concept of learning here, right? Give your attempt at what you think the answer is, right? And then commit. Why we moved on from spreadsheets, okay? Now that's your commit message. You do want a heading in there somewhere. Right, so you're going to do that. Now, in this case, I start talking about it in a minute, how maybe having, the answer versus your answer somehow formatted. Again, this is where I'm going to allow you some creativity in the way that you want to take these notes, as long as they have the information I require. All right, so once you do that commit, continue watching, take notes on what is a database and the role of a database management system, what does it play, and then answer the question at 459 of what other databases you may have heard of, right? And then this is terms and, now again, the work we're doing this time is all in this README file. Okay, all of the work for this time. Now next time, in the next one, we're actually going to start writing some queries, but for this one, we're doing all the work in the README file. All right, so you're going to watch to there, and then in this case we don't have a commit, we have another part that you're going to take notes on. Continuing watching at 8:44, stop, and what do you think the answer is regarding what is SQL, right? Again, it's not necessarily that you have to know, it's just like, what do you think it is? And maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, right? And give your answer what you think it is, and then in this case I want you to actually put the correct answer, right? Then continue watching and also include the given answer. That's what I was saying here. And now your commit message is, what is SQL? Now, as I'm walking through this, remember, you do these commits. Again, you don't have to. You'll end up having several things in this file. Like I suspect I would say another heading, maybe 4, and I'm kind of going back a little bit here. Why, again, I might use this commit because I know that's the content I'm going to do, but I also might use whatever I feel I'd want to put there. As long as I have a heading, I'm good with that. Okay. So you'll go all the way, continue at 844, help you a better understanding, like questions, or maybe you could say queries here, right? And include notes on what a query is and the common ways SQLite is used. And then stop at 1225 and then commit with query in SQLite. Okay, so now we're actually, and I've given you some content about how I grade, so hopefully that's helpful. But in this case, I'm going to just show you, because I'm going to just simulate the idea of thinking that you've done all of these commits, okay? And you have heading, you have content in here. Again, refer to your markdown sheet for how to format that stuff. I want you to approach this in ways that will help you later as you review this file. Okay, but once you get all the commits done, right, then you're ready to actually submit your commit history. Okay, so I'm just going to, again, remember what I'm doing is I don't have all of it done. I'm just showing you the concept. So again, at this point, if you did get status, you would see more changes, right? Now, in this case, I do just because I put these heading 2. So I would do, I'm going to do a clear, get add star, get commit dash m, right? Now, the last commit in this case, if I was doing it along with you, would be this one, okay? Again, don't let that throw you off. I'm just simulating the idea. Oh, okay. I think I ran into this earlier. Okay, so querying SQLite, good. So now and by the way, I didn't even talk about the colors and how they've changed. Right, so now I'm ready to prepare to send my work from my code space into GitHub. Because remember, I don't see your code space. I only see what's on GitHub. And as of right now, that new querying folder is not there with the work that's required. So now what you'd want to do here, right, you could close things if you wanted, but now I could do git push, and then that would push my changes over to GitHub. Now, how do I know that? Well, for one thing, I can see that there's no longer any thing that needs to be done here, but easily I can also move over to that GitHub my repo. I can hit refresh, and I will see that querying directory, and I will see that README file. Okay. All right, so now the last step you would need to do, again, once you've done all the work, is you would give me your commit history. So remember, part of what you get graded on is giving me the right URL. So submit your GitHub private repo commit history for your querying folder that is in your private already said, did I say private repo twice? I did. For grading, okay? So how do you do that? I've shown it to you before. So again, you could pause here if you want to try just to see if you remember how to do that. But otherwise, I'll show you this. So in here, I then would, remember, make sure when you're in GitHub, you're in that directory I'm asking for. Click on history. Now, in this case, there will be more. You'll have all those other commits in there. I'm just giving you the example. You grab this URL, okay, copied it, and then here, start the assignment, do this. Right? Now, if you find you missed something, and by the way, I'm going to go ahead and submit this. If you find you, in reviewing, you may have missed something, then just do another commit. And in that commit, maybe give me a message like, fix something I missed, right? Something like that. It's okay. And it's fine practice to do that. Try to get all the commits, per required, because that's how I grade. But as long as if you corrected something, as long as it's not major, it should be relatively minor, because hopefully you're just looking at your work as you go. Now, you're going to start on the next one, right? So in this case, I would probably, for now, go ahead and shut these out And because I may not be working on this assignment right away, I would probably close my code space out. This is something you've heard me talk about, that, GitHub has given us these code spaces. I'm not sure, because it's the first time I've used them in a class this size. Hopefully we won't run out of time, and that because they allot a certain amount. But it is just good practice. So I'm going to assume at this point, you as a student is not going to work on the next item, because that would be the next item in this case would be the next item we're going to be working on. Okay, so I'm going to simulate good practice, I hope, here by going here, and I'm going to say stop current code space. This is just another way to do it. And notice I'm getting this message here that says stop, right? My sturdy fish stick. That's the name of my code space. Right? So it takes it a few moments to stop here. And the reason, again, I like to do this, and I know it can be a little frustrating, but remember, after 30 minutes of being inactive, that code space is actually stopped. Right? So it's just nice to save a little time, because we're all collectively using a certain bucket here. So it's just good hygiene, I would say. It's good code space hygiene. So now I could close that out. Right, come back over, right? If I wanted to look at, then come back to my repo, and I just want to show you this because I may have talked about it before, but right now, because I have pushed all of my changes from my code space into GitHub, our course organization, right? Everything is up to date. There's no changes that need to be pushed. So when you see that, that's what it means. Okay. Hope you found that helpful. Please reach out if you need help. Think about using Discord as well, and we'll move on to the next one.